Hi, I'm Georgia Raisman, and this is the Monday Scoop. Today I'm talking with Lydia Sussek, a friend of mine and a longtime real estate broker here in New York City at Corcoran. And Lydia, who has lived and breathed real estate for practically since college, is, in addition to being an expert at real estate here and abroad, is a design person. So in thinking about where you're going to live, she helps you envision the space you're going to live in and what your life might be like there. So today, in thinking about how people who are over 55 might best use that next stage of their life in a physical space and where they're going to be, I think she's going to help us talk about what sort of people you would advise to, what you would talk to give you your first pieces of advice on considering the next real estate steps in your life. Who would those advisors be, Lyd?
Okay, so in the beginning steps and thinking about downsizing when you're in your 50s or sometimes earlier, the most important thing is to, first of all, have a good financial plan. It's good to talk with your family or your spouse or your financial planners about how you're going to save up enough money to live on. Selling your property, you'd be talking with a real estate broker who's an expert on how to get you the most amount of money for the property.
You have tax considerations you might
right.
think
For
of.
I mean, I'm not a tax specialist, but you would talk with a specialist in terms of mitigating your taxes. And many times, families will talk with trust and estates attorneys to help set up trust if they're passing on property to their heirs. As well, you would want to get an appraiser in to look at things like antiques and art and jewelry, things that you may not want to take with you to the next smaller space, but things that might be of value.
And worth disposing
And
of
worth
carefully
disposing.
rather than through just
Also,
Craigslist.
Sure. Also, some people want to include their healthcare professionals in terms of what's
Right.
the next best place for them to be living in.
That's a good
For
point.
example, do you really want to buy a place that has stairs? If you're thinking of staying there throughout your later years, that's a major point, as well as the climate or the area you want to live in, amenities and creature comforts and things like that.
Good point, good point. So if that's the case, how do you actually go about evaluating what your next steps are? What are the
Well, you know, as far as the selling of your home, a real estate broker will come in and evaluate the value of your home. In order to get the most value, we really highly suggest getting a professional stager in who will prepare your house, and it sometimes sounds cumbersome, but it takes the stress off and helps you get the most amount of money for your property. Minimal things like painting, removing clutter, and cleaning up and shining up windows and doing minor repairs, sometimes even doing major repairs or renovation. If you do have an estate condition apartment, or home, sometimes a small amount of renovation will really boost the sale price. It's really the curb appeal, whether you're in a residence on the ground level or in an apartment. Yeah.
So it might be worth even investing money, even though you're about to sell something,
Correct.
investing in what might look like to you an upgrade at a point you're not going to live in the place,
Correct.
but
Correct.
it would be more
Making
saleable.
it show ready, photo ready, because today people don't really come to see properties before looking online with their real estate purchasing
of course,
brokers.
yeah. So then, but there are other considerations, like what are you going to move to? Are you going to live in a retirement community? Are you going to rent
Correct.
before you move?
Correct.
What other things do people think
Yeah,
about?
well, there's different choices. You know, do you want to have a pied-à-terre? Do you want to have a second home? Do you want to have a house in the city and a house in the country, or an island property, or live on a boat? Many people are looking into beautiful retirement communities that offer full-service living all in one and in beautiful areas. It's amazing what options are available today, and even at reasonable prices.
It's odd, and it's funny that we should talk about this, but I spoke to a younger woman the other day who said, I can't wait to be 55 because I want to go to one of those all-inclusive communities. She had it picked out, the one that she wanted. It was in California, and it had everything from pottery to swimming pools, and she had to pay a nominal amount every month, and she couldn't wait to get there.
Yeah.
So I guess those communities do appeal to people who like the all-inclusive nature. They can predict what it's going to cost them on a regular basis and plan their futures that way.
Sure. And some people like to have total independence and not live in a specific community. Some people still want to have the ability to do whatever it is that they normally do, but just having a long-term goal of not having high monthly costs. When you're looking into your later years, you want to make sure, even at any income level, you want to make sure that you have enough to really enjoy your retirement. Yeah.
And other elements in advising people on the next step, I guess, where they're going to live, what area of the country they're going to live in, I guess, if they are living in New York, but they can't bear the winters anymore. Do you sell around the country? I mean, are you familiar with the Southwest and the West?
We actually do refer throughout the U.S. as well as internationally. We work with a lot of people from out of the New York City. We're not just New York City brokers. But it is important to do research. And I find that if you have the chance, as young as you are, to get started on the research, because it could be a fun process to decide how you want to live the next phase of your life. People decide what cities they want to move to, or they want to maybe stay in the same area so that they're with all their friends and family. It can be a fun process if you aren't doing it in a rush and aren't doing it because you have to do it.
So do you advise people to, say, rent in a certain locale for a period of time and see how they actually like living there? Depending
on who you are and what your needs are, there's nothing wrong with renting for a while to test out the market. Some people like to just jump in, and some people don't like to be renters. But you know, as you go into your senior years, it is a very good option to be a renter. And you can explore. It gives you, you know, some people put all their stuff in storage, go on a trip, go around the world, go see the country, drive the country, and see for yourself firsthand where you might like to be. Yeah.
That's interesting. I never thought about just driving the country.
Yes.
But I can see living in a place for a while and seeing if you like the vibe and you like the feeling of the people in the area and their friendliness or lack of it, and their receptiveness to new people. How interesting. Well, do you find that there are successful and less successful ways of dealing with this? I mean, what would you see as what are the failures and successes that you have seen in how people think about the next stage in their real estate lives?
Well, in terms of failures, we see in many cases families, older couples they're afraid to talk about moving, they're afraid to think about moving, and they get into a position where the perceived value of their property, of their residence, may not be where they expect it to be, because markets go up and down. Also, as as people stop working, they might have set aside a certain nest egg for the future that may not cover maintaining the current home. So the worst case scenario, which we try to avoid, is, you know, we try to help people to talk not only with us, but with advisors, with their financial advisors, with attorneys, and with healthcare professionals, as well as family members, to see what steps they have to create to get to where they want to be, so that they're not stuck having to move, or really worst case scenario is if something happens to you health-wise and then you can't make your own choices. Then you're really, sometimes people end up in a bad situation because they won't be able to make those choices on their own. The best case scenario is that you do the research, you prepare yourself, and you make a plan.
Now, how do people's children deal with all this? You must have seen a lot of family drama when you have kids who either don't want their parents to sell the family home, or perhaps one wants it and the others don't, or maybe it's not the family home but a vacation home that they're all squabbling over. I mean, how do parents deal with that?
I think it's important to create a good succession plan, and to go in early with an attorney and create a will, so that, God forbid, something happens to you, your children are not arguing over the next steps.
Do you advise that people discuss all of this with their children while it's happening? I mean, there's certainly the real estate
I actually
planning.
advise that people find a non-child trustee, so that there's an outside person that understands what your wishes are in case something happens to you. If you have one child, it's easier to deal with and talk with your child about it. If you have multiple kids, there might be multiple interests that would be...
Have you ever seen situations where a child actually wants a family home, or is that very rare?
It's very rare. Most of the time, people do not want the contents of the home. You know, parents, I mean, all of us, we're creatures of habit. We like to buy things and hold on to them. We don't realize how hard it is to shed ourselves of material possessions. Most adult children do not want our material possessions.
Or the house either.
Or the house. or the house. It can be a cumbersome thing to take on a large family house, especially people have their own lives today, and younger people are looking at smaller and more modern places than their parents had. In fact, we're seeing large houses on smaller plots of land, less to maintain, and also the world has changed a lot.
Well, that must affect people's perception or perceived value of what their house is too. Then, if they've grown up on this, or they've bought this huge house in Scarsdale on a huge parcel, and now they think it must be worth billions of dollars, but people don't want to live that way anymore. I mean, does that lead to some awkward discussions?
I think land does have a large value over time overall, but as far as the value of properties, of residences on large parcels, we're seeing, in fact, you can get a great deal on a house in a place like Scarsdale with a lot of land, because land costs more to maintain than a smaller parcel. So, but there's still value to every property. Every area has its own school districts and other perks that, for resale value, you're going to be able to evaluate. But land never, over time, land still is going to have value.
It's finite. They're not making more of it, especially.
Correct. But other issues like high taxes on residential land, flooding zones, city perks, different municipal amenities.
This age group that we're talking about, 55 and older, sometimes has to deal with issues relating to real estate of their parents.
True.
If their parents are capable of making those decisions, or moving them into assisted living or other areas of that. And at the same time, they could be dealing with real estate issues for their children. Can we help our children? Can we help them with a mortgage? Can we give them a down payment? Have you seen people in those situations?
Yes,
are they
it's called the sandwich generation. And the sandwich generation is responsible suddenly for parents that they thought had a plan maybe, and kids who are just going into their own independent years. We're seeing a lot of kids are becoming more independent quickly and doing their own thing to get into properties. Sometimes parents can help them, and sometimes parents need to focus on their own stability before they can take care of the other generations. However, most people in the 50s in this sandwich generation do have to deal with an elder parent that has that may not be able to make their own decisions. So I think the most thoughtful way to go about it is to make sure that you include your older parents on the options and talk with professionals on how to get from point A to point B. There's many different types of assisted living. We don't see nursing homes anymore, really. I think the whole idea of nursing home is going out the window, and it's rare. And there's wonderful options. Even some of them that are covered by social assistance today, which is I've been pleasantly surprised to learn about in dealing with families in this age group.
So that might be something we would talk about separately. What would you say is the takeaway from all this? What's the scoop? How should people think about, what's the best way for people in the 55-year-old and older areas to start to think about real estate in their futures?
Well, I think that the options are multiple, and so the sooner you can talk about it and think about where you want to go and research ideas, the sooner the better, even before your 50s if you can, because the more you learn and the more you can educate yourself, talk to professionals, get references, talk to friends and people who have gone to that next step, and see who they used or see what they've gone through to get there. When choosing a real estate broker, for example, it's very important to have someone that is, not just someone who's putting an advertisement out there, but someone who's actually able to help you create those next steps, able to get the most money for your property, has the expertise and the ability to really work to create what you need for your future with you to become a team player in your team.
So it's early planning.
Early planning is always the name of the game.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming, Lydia.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. Appreciate it. Great. Thank you for joining me today. Next week on the Monday Scoop, I'll be talking with Rob Taub, an author and radio host, on the topic of everyday living with diabetes. See you then.